Welcome back to the Goku Report, and welcome back for a new edition of Vinyl Pickups, as this is something I only do here and there every so often because vinyls are relatively expensive, and so it takes time and specific albums that I am actually interested in also collecting on vinyl. So with that said, this is a special Metallica edition of Vinyl Pickups. And of course, we are now in the month of the haunting. We are in October, which is why I chose the background music today is the police station theme for Resident Evil 2. So with that said, first up, let's get, in my opinion, probably the weakest of the album pickups out of the way. Though I still like it more than definitely some people out there, that is for sure. But with that said, first up of the 5 pickups is, of course, needs no real introduction because it is none other than Saint Anger. An album, is it weak? Yes. It's not the worst album, to be fair. Maybe of their regular traditional studio albums, it's their weakest. But keep in mind, that is looking at somebody like Metallica, which is legendary and the best-selling metal band of all time. But they got these accolades for a very good reason, as they do have really good, solid music. And I'll say, in my opinion, this album does not deserve the actual hate it gets. Yes, there's some really bad songs, but there are a few songs I think on the album that are legitimately good, as personally, I like the title song, Saint Anger. I actually enjoy it quite a bit. As well as there's definitely several other songs. I would say at least I can speak of. I will defend at least probably 5 songs on this album. I don't think it's great as overall Metallica albums go, but I do think it gets way more hate than it actually deserves. So take that with what you will. But with that said, the second of the 5 is another album I think is legitimately a good hard rock album. Not necessarily a great metal album, but a great hard rock album nevertheless. I still want to get my hands on the original Load, trying to find it for a reasonable price range. I lucked out with some of these. Saint Anger is not as insanely expensive, probably because it's less demand. Surprisingly, I also found Reload for a good price. Now, like I said, I actually like this album quite a bit. There's definitely specific songs on the album that really stand out to me, and that has some of probably my favorite hard rock metal songs of the 90s is on this album, as well as Load. Personally, I think if you combine the best tracks off of Load and Reload together, you would have yourself definitely, I think, probably one of the best Metallica albums. But to each their own. Everyone has their own opinion and also their own favorite, in their opinion, maybe overrated or underrated albums. Me, I feel like Load. This album is a little underappreciated. It's definitely had success in the mainstream, but among like the hardcore old school Metallica fans did not like the 90s era Metallica that much. Personally, I think 90s Metallica wasn't that bad overall, because you had Load, Reload, you had the Black Album, which is my personal favorite Metallica album of all time. But honestly, I say if you haven't checked out, do give yourself a service. Check out Load and especially Reload. I think it's the stronger of the two. But with that said, next up we're going to look at, quickly go back in time to probably most people's opinion the best album Metallica ever did, and that being, of course, none other than the album that really needs no introduction, Master of Puppets. Personal opinion here, of the original 4 albums released, the first 4, for me personally, if I had to rank the original 4, for me, of course, as I've already said before, Ride the Lightning is my personal favorite of the first 4 Metallica albums. For me, I feel probably Kill 'Em All is by far the weakest of the original four for me personally. I would probably put Master of Puppets in third place of the original four Metallica albums. Like I said, arguably without a shadow of a doubt, Ride the Lightning is my personal favorite of the original. But still, Master of Puppets is a great album, don't get me wrong. It's easily one of Metallica's strongest albums. It's in my top 5 favorite Metallica albums. But, with that said, there is, besides Ride the Lightning, one other album I think is actually better than Master of Puppets, as good as it is. And that is the next one. The only one of the 4 I had to get, or 5 I had to get pre-owned for a more reasonable price, luckily. Condition was mint. And that is, in my opinion, the second. For me, the second best of the original 4 Metallica albums is, of course, And Justice for All. For me, is my personal second favorite of this era. I would say this album is probably overall, is also in my top 5, of course, no surprise there. As I do like this album quite a bit. It's an album that has grown on me over time. Ride the Lightning really early on really caught my attention the most of the original 4. I think because it's the most consistent beginning to end original Metallica album, in my opinion anyways. This album has aged better than the others of the original 4. This album, though, has grown on me over time. Ride the Lightning's pretty much always been in my top, along with also the Black Album. But, I think albums like Reload, as well as albums like Death Magnetic, and this are definitely 3 albums that really grew on me over a period of time. While Master of Puppets kind of dropped a little in rank over time for me personally. But, with that said, and yeah, I personally love the cover art for the album, I'll admit. It's, in my opinion, probably one of Metallica's easily best cover art-wise, I think, of any album they've done. Even though it's very simplistic, the next is arguably my favorite, probably Metallica album cover, even if it is very simple. And I just love it because the feeling it gives me of something like Dracula and stuff. And keep in mind, this was in the 2000s. At the time, I am still an uber fan of vampires. Old school vampires at that. Not the garbage modern crap. But that's one of the reasons I love this. And it kind of gives me a little bit just a feel for some reason. When I look at this cover, it makes me think about, in my opinion, the best vampire movie of all time, Bram Stoker's Dracula. But, with that said, overall with Death Magnetic, like I said, I think it's a superb album. I think this album is great. It is in my top 5 favorite Metallica albums of all time. As time has gone on, this album has kept going up in rank for me. I think it is a great album, and it is arguably their best of the decade of the 2000s. Keep in mind, they didn't have many albums in that period of time, though you would also have some side albums that would be released, like the S&M album, which I'm so-so on, and then the other one, their covers album, which I think is actually great, Garage Inc. But, with that said, that is it for this edition of Vinyl Pickups. What's your opinion of these 5 final Metallica pickups? Which is your personal favorite of the 5? Out of these 5, for me personally, I would say my favorites are easily And Justice for All, Death Magnetic, and probably Reload. Well, somewhere between Reload and Master of Puppets, and of course the somewhat guilty pleasure album of mine, that being Saint Anger. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. And right now, next Metallica album on my list that I want to get hold of is Garage Inc. on vinyl. But with that said, I'll see everyone again here on the Goku Report, and have a good October and a good upcoming Halloween. And I will be doing more horror theme music in the background for my videos for this month in honor. of one of my favorite holidays of the year. But with that said, I'll see y'all soon enough.